Good day, my fellow Americans and good people of the world. Today, I would like to address you in regards to the present situation. I am really disappointed in the fact that we have the big, beautiful bill that has passed through Congress and is headed to the president's desk for signing. To me, it seems like a rushed situation that is being forced upon America by the current administration that lacks the capacity for strategy or tact, patience, or a conscious consideration of the outcome consequences that will surely come based off of their decision making. To me, it seems like POTUS 47 is a very impatient man, and he just wants to hurry up and pass this one big, beautiful bill, get everything through all at once so we can start enacting my policies and get things done. And I'm sure that he, figured that that's the best route to take, since his first administration, he was really bogged down by bureaucracies and the slow process of government, and he just wanted things done right now his way. And the thing is like the slow motion process of government is actually an inherent precautionary corrective safety mechanism. It's there to make sure that we don't make hasty decisions. You don't haste the day and forget to take the steps along the way to make sure that you are really conscious of what you're doing. You're really considerate of what the consequences will be, and you're taking a step back to perspective things in such a way of understanding there are many factors at play. This is a very complex situation, and that when you make a change in one place, it's going to have repercussions in other places that you may not be able to readily see immediately, but they could be dire consequences that then create these huge problems that you have to deal with later. And so the fact that government is a slow process is supposed to be one of the built-in mechanisms to help to make sure that it actually does its job well. And fast-tracking things through Congress to the point where most people in Congress didn't even read it, and that those that did read it didn't read the whole thing and read it, and some of them were outraged yet still voted for it. So and a lot of that is because they were bullied into the situation. The president was there and all his little minions, to say, you better get this done or you're not going to get reelected, or I'm going to make your life miserable, or some other thing that they're blackmailing these people into accomplishing, the task of passing this, bloated bill. And to me, it's just like, if the whole point of, where we're at in the government right now is this difficult situation of having a very, bloated deficit. Basically, we are charging, the future to have to pay for the things that we're doing right now. And that we're paying money into right now. And the things that we're paying into right now are not actually extending any value to the future. It's only like buying us a little bit of time for the day. It's kind of like the concept of why you don't buy meals with a credit card or clothes, because these are things that are not necessary in terms of like the long term. They're not investments. Yes, you need food every day to eat in order to survive, and yes, you need clothing in order to be covered, but there are ways to make your clothing last so you don't have to buy new clothes all the time, and that you don't necessarily have to go out and spend $100 on a meal when you can make a meal at home for $10, that sort of thing. So there's ways to get the things that you need without having to charge it to the future, where you're going to have to pay on it in this interest. And so basically we are charging, our future generations to have to pay for the things that we are experiencing right now. And those things aren't necessarily carrying forward any value that they're going to be able to experience. This is like the immediate now. We're getting the things that we think that we want, but they're not necessarily things that are building up tangibilities for holistic wealth. We are certainly not doing the things necessary for, prosperity for our posterity. And that's what the deficit really represents. And so the problem is, the tax revenues is how the government uses, it brings in taxes to be able to pay for all of the things that we need in order to have a functioning government, and all these programs that we have created over time. Our tax revenues come in to be able to pay for that. And I know that the president says that tariffs are going to pay for all of this stuff, or, charging people for a gold Trump card for citizenship. It's just such a degradation of the entire, virtue, value, and prestige of citizenship by charging people money for it. But the idea that you can get these money in from these other sources and somehow that's going to be able to make the system work, it's not really how it's going to work, how it's going to happen. What we need to do is recognize, everybody needs to be able to pay taxes, and those taxes need to actually go to certain specific things that are an investment to our future, to make sure that we aren't, charging in the future the interests of our needs for now. But then we're also increasing our capacity to have productivity, increase our capacity to be able to generate more revenues in the future, and to help to no longer need to pay out in certain programs because we've solved for those needs by ways of innovations that have been presented in the progress of our economy. This is why we have a capitalism economy, is to be able to help to be able to find the best practices to make the cheapest and most affordable, still quality provisions that we need in order to accommodate and support the things that we need in order to have an enduring, thriving, advancing civilization. And so there's certain things that we need in order for society to function. We have to be able to pay for those things to work. We need to pay for bridges. We need to have bridges. We need to have roads. We need to have schools, these sorts of things. So we have to pay for it somehow. And you do that through, weighing and levying taxes. People pay into those taxes, and then we all get to benefit from the fact that we are all paying into this system. And so the biggest problem is we have too much spending, not enough revenues. And so we're charging to the future, which blows our deficit. And most of the money that we owe in our deficit is interest for loans that we've taken for past and prior things. And so you're not thinking in terms of like, how do we have a truly balanced budget, And I think while I do not support the notion of the, slash and smash and destroy and, defund and divest and all this other stuff that the Doge or whatever ended up doing, because it was, speedy, and it was a smash and grab, and it was, dismantling things you didn't even understand, and, causing unnecessary harm and things like that. But the spirit of intent of, we need to have, an efficient, effective system of governance that makes sure that our money is funding those things which are being funded without having, money turn into a leaky sieve and it's going to waste, sort of thing. And we need to make sure that there aren't people that are exploiting systems, and that we need to make sure that the people who are in positions of power of determining where that money is going, they aren't abusing that power to make that money not actually go to supporting the programs they're supposed to do. So, I mean, the spirit of intent is certainly a reasonable one, but how they go about doing it is unreasonable. And how you do a thing is the most important factor. So, I think that we can take that into consideration, understand that we need to be able to draw down our deficit, we need to be able to increase our revenues, and the best way to do that is to become more productive. The more productive we are in society, the more money people make, the more that they can pay into taxes. It will increase our needs in some areas for some programs. We are going to be using roads more, and so they're going to deteriorate more, so we're going to have to fund more of those. But it's once you reach that more people, once you get that critical mass, then you're able to have enough going into the system that even though there's going to be more going out in some of these ways, it will actually even itself out. You have to understand every single point of, you know, incoming and outgoing inputs and exports out of the system in order to understand how the configuration in the middle, like actually how things are being put to a proper intended use, gets implemented so that it can achieve the desired outcome on the other side. And so I think that we need to do a really serious sit down and think, conscious consideration. You know, we need to reimagine the Social Security system because it's just not able to do what it said it was going to do. It's not going to be able to continue to do it that way. We need something better. It's much better. And we can, and we should be focusing on doing that instead of trying to, you know, hold up this system that obviously is not working. I mean, it's functioning right now, but not in a sustainable way. So we need to reimagine that. It's the same thing with other social support systems. You know, our social safety nets, our welfare system needs to be reimagined to be about welfaring. We need to make sure that everybody's faring well in their lives and that we provision, accommodate, steward, and support everybody's needs so that they can live the good life. And our social safety nets, our welfaring system, should be about establishing a criterion echelon of society, the baseline standard. Like, nobody lives below this standard, that we make sure that the basic in society that everybody gets to live in is a good life. And to do so in such a way where it's not taking from the rich to give to the poor sort of thing. Like, I don't want to lower these people to the lowest common denominator. I want to raise us up to a higher standard of, common standard that everybody can be perfectly okay with. I would want it to be so that, somebody in the upper echelons of society wouldn't mind if they had to be brought down to this criterion echelon because it's still a good life, and they could be happy and not just like content with it, but fulfilled as a person, that they need to thrive on that level as well. And I believe there's a way to work it out so that we don't have such a huge chasm between the haves and the have-nots by simply building a bridge of consistency, of commonality, this standard that everybody gets brought up into, and we sustain and maintain that, and that's our welfaring social safety net that makes sure everybody lives the good life. And then we don't have to worry about there being a stark difference between the richest person in the world and the person who's making the least amount of money in the world, because no matter what, everybody has what they need in order to live a happy, thriving life. They're living the good life. And this takes us away from the concept of money mattering at all. Like, it's not the money that matters, it's the outcomes. We want people to live a good life. That's the outcomes that we're striving for. So that should be what our social safety nets are about. And I believe if we are investing in creating and establishing that criterion echelon of society, making sure everybody lives the good life, we steward, provision, accommodate, and support everybody in this this criterion echelon of society, then we can have legitimate things that we know that we're investing in that works for everybody. And so we don't have to then come to the chopping block in a situation where, you know, we only have so much money to go around, guys. Where are we going to invest it into? You know, it's like, well, obviously we're going to invest into the thing that's common to everyone, that serves everyone's best interest. So it works for everyone. Nobody's getting disadvantaged and nobody's getting left behind. We need to have a social safety net that does that. So we don't have to worry about, well, you know, Medicare is going to be taken away, or food stamps are going to be taken away, or, you know, healthcare for all is going to be taken away, or, you know, like the capacity to build roads and bridges is going to be taken away. You know, like we don't need to decide whether or not we're going to, you know, keep upholding social security or make sure we continue to fund programs like Meals on Wheels. Like, we should just have a standard that we invest into that makes sure that those things happen as outcomes, and that we need to invest ourselves in that. And it's not in the concept of like putting all your eggs in one basket, but it's rather saying like everybody needs to have a basket, and everybody needs to have that basket filled with the provisions of being able to, of living the good life, what that's going to take. You know, everybody needs food, everybody needs water, everybody needs shelter, everybody needs clothes, you know, and everybody needs good and decent work, something to do to apply themselves to. And work doesn't necessarily need to be that you go out and you get a paycheck. Work should also be about just like being creative, you know, being helpful, being caring for others. You know, these sorts of things. Once we start taking the money aspect out of our decision making and make it focused on outcomes that make sure that, you know, we're being constructive and productive and innovative, and we're inspiring human ingenuity to reach the heights of our highest capacity, and to help bring out the best in people and help them to learn and help them to build new skills and increase their capabilities. You know, that's the type of stuff that we should be investing in. And we can do all of that in such a way, I think, where if we reimagine our taxes so that we have what I call a portions tax, where we have a stewardship tax, everybody has to pay it across the board. That helps us to steward the criterion echelon of society. That's our social safety net. It's immutable, it's unchangeable, it's secure. It may have to raise over time because cost of inflation and these sorts of things, but it's never going to be put on the chopping block. It's never something that can be taken away. It's a continuum. It's forever. But then we have portions taxes that says, I want this project to be advanced, and I know it's going to take a little bit more money in order to accomplish the outcomes necessary to grow it in this certain way, you know, to innovate it in this way, to, you know, bring it back up to code, or to build in, you know, upgrade systems or whatever. It's going to take a little bit more money than what is the baseline standard of the criterion income that is invested into that program through the stewardship tax. So individuals who are vested interest in growing that particular part can take a portion of their tax and invest it into that. And the reason why we want to do that is because it gives agency to taxpayers to know that their money is going where they say it should go, and they feel like they're helping to make a difference in the ways that they see in society are important. It also gives us something to, you know, commune around and say like, hey guys, let's rally support around getting this particular project done. You know, we need 40 more people to invest their portions tax this year into doing this, and then we'll reach our goal and we'll be able to get all these things done. You're going to make all these jobs for all these people. It's going to help all these people in their lives most directly in these specific ways. And once this is taken care of, it'll be locked down in place. We have all the people that are going to maintain the system over time. We're going to be able to do that with all of this, you know, work, and it's just upgrading our system. And we can take, you know, certain provisions of our tax to invest into that in the portions that are necessary to grow it in that particular way. And I think if we do that, instead of, you know, like giving massive tax cuts to the rich or whatever, rather just say like, if you all help to invest in these certain specific programs and grow them out in these certain and specific ways that we as an entire society have decided this is what we need to do in order to advance ourselves and improve our human condition, and improve the human situation, then your taxes in the next series of tax considerations could be cut down to a lower bracket for a certain period of time. I think it should be, something like every 3 years we reconsider what bracket you're going to fit into. And if during that 3 years you helped make investments in these certain areas, the following 3 years you fit into a different bracket. And that bracket is based off of what types of programs that you helped put portions tax into and invest into most directly. Instead of it being like you create a foundation that's a nonprofit and then you hide your money away in it and then you don't pay taxes on it, and then nothing other the benefit society's ever made out of it. Rather, we have strict accountability. We know that these things are specific projects that we as a collective decided on, and you have to invest into those in order to get that particular type of reduction in your tax. And it would be great because people can then think about it like, all right, we're going to make our plans, we're going to invest these 3 years, and then the following 3 years we know we're going to, we're aiming for fitting into this bracket. More than likely we're going to fit in there based off of our investments. And then we're going to grow our company during that 3 years in these specific ways because we'll be able to get more profits out of it, right? Because we'll be paying less taxes during that time period. It gives people constancy and consistency and something that they can build on, something they can, tangible that they can consider for and plan out, in a reasonable way. Just like you think of the tariffs that are being thrown, willy-nilly here and there. It's 100%, it's 125%, it's 50%, it's 75%, it's 10%. Every day it changes. You don't know what it is. And those uncertainties cost a lot of money, waste so much money, time, effort, energy, stresses people out. How can you build on a future of uncertainty? You can't. And so I don't care what sort of little, penny dollar here, even if it's in the billions, that you could get out of that. The fact that, okay, where's that money going? Any specific directive? No, it's just coming in, and then the government, puts it on their budget line, and then, they determine wherever it's going to go. Like, I'm pretty sure there's quite a lot of people in the United States that are not okay with funding ICE right now, because I know I'm certainly not okay with my tax money going towards that. But, in the government just getting to decide where all that money goes to, I think is unfortunate, because the people themselves, what's the saying, no taxation without representation? The people in Congress are not representing the American people right now, and now they're causing all of these taxes to be shifted, and for people in the higher rungs of society to get off the hook of having to pay taxes, which means there's less revenues coming in, which means that our deficit will inflate, and it doesn't matter how many programs you cut. There will never be enough programs to cut to remove the overall cost of society. People need to pay taxes, and the people who make more money need to pay more taxes. But again, if we create a system of baseline stewardship tax and then a portions tax on top of that, with the situation where you can invest money, extra money, into certain programs throughout this 3-year period, you could know that you will be set in a different bracket in the following 3 years. And then there's so much you can do with that information, knowing that your tax rate for that year is going to be set at this amount. And then society doesn't hate you because you're not paying any taxes, but you're not going to, your company is going to be able to make it through, because it's like, we know we have to pay at least this much tax, and then you can do more productive things during those years, and you can amp up your production in anticipation of those 3 years. It gives you something to build on, a tangibility. Also, in the terms of small businesses would be able to benefit from this, knowing that, the first 3 years of your development, you're not really going to be making a whole lot of money, but if you invest portions of your tax into certain programs that could also, they benefit your community, but also in a roundabout way benefit your capacity to do business as within your community, then that also makes it so that, in the following 3 years, when, you actually hit the ground running really hard with the businesses in the 3rd year, It's like the make or break year, right? Like at that point in time, you would know your taxes would be a little bit lower, and that's one constant that you can bet on, that you know you will be able to build. It's an integrity that you can build around and say, I know this is an assurance, and I'm paying into systems that help other people and achieve these programs we all want to have together. And I'm securing for myself that assurance that on that third year that I'm going to be able to pay a little bit less taxes, so that when I am hitting the ground running with my business, man, it's going to be able to take off to heights, and I'll be able to operate in a smaller tax bracket to do that. To me, that seems like more reasonable way to approach taxes than to try to raise the number overall for everybody, because then you get the whiplash effect that we have right now, where now the top fraction of a 1% is getting massive tax cuts, and then all of these necessary programs for the lower echelon of society are getting cut, and people are going to starve, and people are going to be harmed, and they are going to unnecessarily die and suffer. And I don't think that there's any justification for that sort of thing, especially because it's was about money. The most valuable thing in the world is your life, and money means nothing when it comes down to you living a good life. You can't put a price on those things, and it's sad and unfortunate that the current administration is doing exactly that. They're putting a price on your life, and they're saying that your life is not worth them having to pay a little bit more in taxes. It's not worth it for them. They're perfectly fine with you dying, if that's what it's going to take, in order for them to save a little bit more money. And mind you, the money that they save is not going back into the community, it's not going back into society, because they live in their little insulated pocket of thriving. Their money just circulates back in between themselves. It doesn't ever trickle down to anybody else. So they're hoarding. These people are hoarding, resources and hoarding money, and then making money the most important thing, and then making everybody fight over scraps and whatnot. It's just a very dysfunctional way to arrange and organize a society. And there's going to be a lot of negative outcome consequences and repercussions that are going to happen from this. And I just hope that we as a people can say, well, that means that we need now to step up and do what's necessary to fill in and create an auxiliary support system where the government is failing us, and for us to build something that will help to get us through, and then hopefully start using that to transition that over to be the more permanent solution, where we no longer have to place so much faith and trust in a government that obviously has so many dysfunctions in it that it's not able to do its job once it gets out of hand to a certain point. And if the powers that be are placed into the hands of people that do bad things. So we need to focus on putting it in the hands of people that are going to do good, and that care about other people, and have the best interests of others at heart, and best interests of the nation at heart. And I think we have an opportunity to really start doing the portions tax before it becomes something that newly duly elected officials could enact into law. We can start doing this ourselves as citizens, start building out what would be considered a portions tax, investing in these programs, and then making it so that money is helping to reduce our dependence on government programs that are not secure, they're not safe. These are not assurances anymore. They used to be, they're not anymore. And then make it so people are less dependent on it, so that they have a system that is dependable, something that is reliable, something that is trustworthy, something that they can bet on. And let that be something that's in the power of the people's hands to determine and to operate and facilitate. And I think that once we do that, you're giving people agency, capital, and resource that is not coming from the government, but is rather coming from the people pulling their resources in a way that says, we're going to make sure that we provide for the criterion echelon of society. Then the government's kind of lose power and control over people's lives. And I think it will help to resettle things the way that it needs to be anyway. This is why we have capitalism, is to make sure that the government doesn't dictate everything for us. Where I think we fail is the fact that we don't have what I call a proper capitalism. Proper capitalism is very simple, as a proper intended use. It has something that it does specifically, and that outcome that it does, that what it achieves, is welfaring stewardship. It means that we are stewarding the welfaring of everyone, so that, America works for everyone without the disadvantage of anyone, so nobody gets left behind and everyone lives the good life. And if we provision, accommodate, and steward, in a sense of making sure that everybody has that, giving them agency, resource, and capital, and a seat at the table, skin in the game, we can actually transform our governance into a self-governance that is based off of the concept of a cooperative. So it means that everybody is a part of it. Everybody works, you participate, and you contribute, and you benefit. And everybody gets to draw from it, whatever they need in order to achieve the, necessary outcomes of having the good life. And I think if we build this up in an auxiliary way, we can have it run along with our other branches of government, and then solidify this as the framework for this scaffolding to the larger government, and the framework for the establishment of a fourth branch of government, which would be the civics branch of government. And it's, we the people actually having the capacity to self-govern, and for that to be the overarching power, the highest authority in society, which is the individual. And then put the other branches of government in their proper place, in their proper intended use. So through proper capitalism, we determine that we're going to steward the welfaring of all people, and we're going to take on outcome engineering to make sure that that happens, and to use that as the structural framework to legitimize a fourth branch of government, do a constitutional amendment to add it into our Constitution, to take back the power for the people, which is already in the Constitution in so many words, 10th, the 9th, 4th, 1st, basically the entire, Bill of Rights, first 10 amendments of the Constitution are basically saying the Constitution is the power for the people, the insular protection of the people against the government, getting too big for its britches, essentially. And it's taking back the power to say we the people are wielding that power. We're the ultimate arbiters. We're the ultimate, we are the first, last, and the final say in these sorts of things. And the other branches of government are there just to help us to facilitate in each individual way how we formalize laws, and how we enact them, and how we make sure we're living in accordance with it, these sorts of things. The government is not supposed to, impede, impose, or infringe. They're supposed to intervene on our behalf when necessary. And I don't think that anything that the current administration, POTUS 47, is doing is necessary. It is doing the great service of showing us how easily the system as it stands now is corrupted by, hungry, money-hungry, greedy, power-seeking individuals that are self-serving, selfish, what I like to call the deviant echelon of society, how they can get a hold of the reins of power and just run away with it in such a way that just leaves everybody else by the side of the road. It's unfortunate. But it doesn't have to be this way. We can make a change, and I really do hope that we look at it in terms of, if we need to make sure that we don't bankrupt ourselves in the future of, having too much that we have to pay out, especially in accumulative interest, in the future for things that we're doing now. If we need to make sure that we're investing in things that are going to be long-term, and that we aren't living in the waste is growth mentality, which is a big problem in America, is one of the fundamental, errors and mistakes of capitalism and the three-branch system of government that have somehow intertangled and intertwined and embedded within one another's grasps, fused together to make this monstrosity of a system that is just in a runaway train effect that is leading us to a terrible place, because there's no checks, there's no balance, there's no purpose, there's no vision, there's no guidance. It's just like dog eat dog, mighty crush the weak, free for all hellscape, and winner takes most and these sorts of things. And it should never be that way, but that's where it has been taken, where it has gone, and that's because those systems lack the corrective mechanism that's necessary to make sure that things don't get out of hand like they have. And that only corrective mechanism that exists is the people themselves. But we need to give ourselves more power than just voting people in and out of office. We need to have a seat at the table. We need to have skin in the game. We need to have a say-so in where we're going. We need to make sure that the projects that we take on are going to lead us to where we want to and need to go, and that we all become outcome engineers, investing our time, effort, energy, participation, and contribution to make that happen. And to understand, we have to invest in the capabilities of people that are here in the United States. Really tap into human ingenuity and to amplify it, and to use that in the most efficient, effective, intelligent, most natural way possible, by giving people the means to self-actualize and to find where they can do the best service to the world, and help them to improve their capabilities, so that when they find that, after contributing in many different ways to discover where they belong to do the best service of the world, then amplify that capacity in them and help them through lifelong education to improve upon that, so they're always going to be the masters of their craft and the most capable person to do the most effective job possible in the most efficient manner, within reason, so that we can have a reliable set of assurances that we can bank on, so that we know, kind of like the portions taxes, if you make these investments for these 3 years, then on the 3 years after that, you're going to pay a little bit less taxes. That's banking on the future, assurances. And so we need to give that type of situation so we can have assurances. We know when we invest in these people a good quality education and we're improving their capabilities, once they've achieved a certain level of mastery, we know that they're going to be able to achieve this higher level of productivity at this point in time. We know that when we make sure people have good health and well-being and good food, clean water and sanitation, they're not living in polluted environments, that they are going to be able to sustain a level of health that makes sure that they can continue to be most productive. And so it really has to be about investing in those things that will help to secure these moments of assurance that we can bank on. And when you do that, that you can create efficiencies off of that assurance that make sure that we can whittle down the deficits in these ways. It's kind of like, with the Doge came in and it's like cutting all these programs because we're going to save $1 or $2. I mean, it caused a lot of other problems, actually made it more expensive just to administrate the cutting of those systems, And then you have the fallout from those consequences that they are not taking ownership for or responsibility for in any capacity. They're just like, whatever, people are dying, it's okay. It's not really happening and I'm not paying attention, so I can't see it, so it must not be real. And so it's unfortunate that that's happening. So these negative outcome consequences are actually depleting people's capabilities, making us less productive, and making people less capable to participate and contribute to society. Kicking all of these immigrants out, it's like, man, these were capable, productive, intelligent, awesome human beings that are full of potential that we just needed to tap into and to direct and to legitimize them and give them capacity to legitimately participate, contribute to society. Now we have food on farms laying out there rotting because there's nobody to go pick them, when we had perfectly capable workers out there working their asses off, busting their butts, doing a good work, doing the good job for meager pay, unfortunately, in terrible conditions in some cases, but they were doing the hard but necessary work to help to keep our systems working, functional, and thriving. And what do we do as a say thanks? We kick them out because of some thought that they might not be legitimate in this way. Like, how about we just do away with this illegitimate, factor, give them a legitimacy, bring them into the full meridian of society, let them continue to do their good work, and do so in such a way where, like, they can be a part of the taxation system and pay for stewardship tax and pay the portions tax and help to build out these systems together. Like, they were not taking away from us, they were adding to, in ways that are so underappreciated that you don't know what you got till it's gone. And we're going to learn a lot of really hard lessons about that. Very same in the terms of the soft power that we stopped investing into in other nations around the world, that Doge decided we shouldn't be paying to, help to support the health and well-being and quality of life for other people in other parts of the world, because they failed to see the fact that it was actually preventing conflict, preventing violence, and establishing stability to the point where it actually adds a level of security for providing for the common defense of America that cannot be accommodated in any other way. And that's lost now. And it can be, and I predict that it will be, returned in a new form, but we'll never be able to make up for that lost time. And now we're going to have to live in the consequences of all these conflicts that are breaking out, and the loss of our prestige and integrity, and the shame of America. Now we can't save face for this unless we do a lot of hard work. In a moment's time, your credibility gone, your prestige gone. When they say, like, trust is something that takes a really long time to build, a really long time to build up. It only takes a single moment to be lost. And it's not to say that you can't build it back up, but you're certainly going to always have this, thing that you're going to have to accept somehow that you didn't have to accept before. It makes things more of a challenge than they needed to be. It makes it much harder than it needed to be to begin with. So, I think that, we will in time redeem the time and set things back on. There is potential to actually turn this into a really good thing, to come back in and do something way more incredible than what we were doing. It's going to take the right leadership in order to get us there, and we're just not there yet because there's not enough people that are interested in taking that type of pursuit to improve things and change things for America, because they're right now been convinced that money is so important, and sure, it is, because it is the thing that metrics our transactions. It is the thing that we use to help to communicate to us, the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how. And we embody that into this symbolic form. Now it's less about paper and coins and more about a relationship to a decimal point. But it represents to us an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish together. And because of the fact that it has become so prominent in our society, we have lost sight of what actually matters, and we're not focusing on accomplishing that. So I think that there's potential in being able to address the deficit, which is about money, in such a way that is shifting our focus to outcomes that we're engineering that achieve good outcomes of welfare and stewardship, which helps to provision, accommodate, steward, support the capacity for people to live the good life, making sure America works for everyone without the disadvantage of anyone, so nobody gets left behind. and building this auxiliary system that's the scaffolding of our lives to help to abridge, to add in a fourth branch of government, give the power back to the people, help us to be able to self-determine finally how we the people are going to lead ourselves, and to use that as this support system to build upon the means and the modes and the mechanizations that are necessary in order for us to stop worrying about the money so much and worry more about how we achieve outcomes. You know, how you do anything is how you do everything. And if how we do something is we consider only the money metric of things, then we don't consider the outcome consequences of our decisions. Like, you know, at what cost does that money gained really, you know, bring us into this situation of determinations. You know, we're limiting our options for the future because we're so worried about, you know, what dollar you save today. It should really be about investing for our future, making sure people are more productive so that we can increase our capacity to generate value that makes sure that we are not left in want in the future. We have more than enough of what we need so that as we, you know, grow in our capacity over time, we can create savings that then we can pay down and pay down and pay down our systems so that we pay less in interest and we increase more in savings, and eventually that interest gets paid down enough and our savings continues to grow, and our savings continues to grow, our investments become larger, our deficit gets lowered, and then we get into what is a balanced budget where we actually have, you know, instead of having a deficit, we have a, you know, an abundance of these, you know, capital capacities to invest in other things, or to have, you know, our reserves for the rainy day fund that we may need for the, you know, in case shit happens, sort of insurance that we need to, you know, place for the future, because you never know. You can only predict, you know, the outcomes in a scenario universe. You can't accurately predict the future. You can only just anticipate what's going to happen in a scenario universe. And in that case, it would say, you know, shit's going to go down every once in a while, and we have to be prepared for anything and everything all at once. And how can you do that if you're not having some sort of rainy day fund, you know, and have more than enough people capable to step up and be like, we got this, we're ready to, you know, we may do this thing today, but tomorrow we can do, you know, we can switch gears, we can pivot. We have the capacity to pivot, to do whatever is necessary at that point in time. And that, I think, is also solving the problem for, you know, government and bureaucracy, very slow people in society. We the people, the functionings of capitalism, especially if it has a proper intended use for proper capitalism, very fast. Things happen, you know, constantly happening in that realm, and so there's more room to maneuver in that area to get things done and to shift and to, you know, like anticipate, you know, for future comings and then reap the rewards when they come in. And instead of like pooling that all in, you know, some small little thing like people are doing now with AI, it's like you're doing the wrong thing investing all this money into, you know, achieving AI, because one day it'll eventually maybe, you know, be useful. Like, there's other useful things that need to be built up too. Like, we've got to evenly distribute our growth of innovation, guys. Otherwise, it's going to be like a topple over system. You need to find balance, and that's really what that's supposed to be about. And it's unfortunate that this big, beautiful bill is kind of like, you know, on the scale system weighing us down. You know, like it's so much, and that it would take a tremendous amount of, you know, human investment of weight to balance that out, and human capacity and human, you know, productivity in investing in to be able to balance that out. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I do anticipate, and it will be an inevitability. We have two options. We can either go bankrupt, and we will experience some of the worst fallouts of society, or we can start to break down what the big beautiful bill is building up, create an auxiliary economy that takes away from the government's capacity to feed into that system, and build up a system on our own that can be balancing for that. And I really think that that's the best thing to do. And then start finding individuals who are willing to become members of Congress, so we can get rid of the people who are who really sold out America. They sold out America. You know, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. You won't. And they don't care. So you need to find people that you can vote into office who will care, who will read the bill's details and provisions, its terms and conditions, and understand how it's going to affect you. And then be more than willing to do a town hall with you and sit down with you and tell you, this is what's about to happen, guys. This is what we have to plan and prepare for. This is inevitability. It may happen, it may not happen. You know, talk with your friends and families, and you know, other people to talk to their Congress people to say, you know, I don't think that this is going to be in the best interest of my family, or you know, all people, and to change it. That's the type of Congress we should have. Somebody who's going to listen to the people, who's going to tell it to them straight, let them know what's going on. There's only so much Congress can do. It's mostly in the power in the hands of the people. And so the people shouldn't be just be going to Congress and do your job. You know, you definitely need that part, but you also need the people to do something to be a corrective mechanism, counteract these bad things that are happening. So hopefully we can get society on track. I think, you know, POTUS 47 is bringing people to the breaking point, getting them completely fed up with the way things are, and they're ready for change. They're primed, and they're prepped, and they're ready to go, and all they need now is just the incentive to start taking on the projects to be able to change. You know, we need a fourth branch of government so that people have more power than just voting capabilities. They need to be able to take the power back of their self-sovereignty. We need to have personal dominion, so the government can't come in and make arbitrary laws to dictate your life to you. You know, and we need to start having a vision, like what we're actually trying to build out together in the future. And it needs to, yes, address the deficit, but it needs to be more than just doing that. We need to be about outcomes, making sure that everybody gets to live a good life. And what does that look like? What does that look like to you? We need your input as people, and that's what a fourth branch of government, civics, is supposed to do. The people's input. Finally, in government, finally the people have a voice in government. Finally the people have a seat at the table. You know, finally, the people who have always gone out and done activism and held up posters saying, government, do your job, like, you would actually have the means to make them do their job, or the means to make them lose their job if they aren't doing it, you know, and not have to wait until midterms. You know, it's part of the problem why this bill passed, is these people don't have to work, their jobs are safe for now. Making a mistake like this, they don't have to fix it because their jobs are safe for now. And then they got, you know, President Pandemonium, POTUS 47, saying, like, I got your back, guys. You just follow along with me, and I'll make sure you get reelected. Don't you worry. We'll throw all the money at the problem that we need to. And, you know, they're banking on the American people forgetting about this day when, you know, Congress decided, hey, it's all right. We're going to go ahead and pass this bill. We know it's going to have consequences, but we're not going to have to face them. You know, if we had a fourth branch of government, they wouldn't be able to pass this bill, first of all, because the people would have to be the ones who create the language of the bill, not some backroom deals and, you know, legislative bodies and, you know, people doing bribes and stuff like that. You know, people that are self-serving, those aren't the ones who make the decisions. It's the people themselves. And then it passes to Congress, and Congress is like, okay, this is the voice of the people. How can we turn that into a reasonable, just, fair law? You know, and then can we all agree that this is going to, you know, carry on through our traditions of society? Is does it uphold to the law of the land, the Constitution? You know, does it adhere to the wants and needs of the people? House of Representatives, tell us, you know, is this what your people are telling you is what, you know, they agreed to in terms of how we, Congress, are interpreting it. Does it translate, between the people? And listen to the people and have that conversation, and then formalize it into law. And then the people are like, yep, that's what we agreed to. And then it goes eventually to the president's desk. So the president says, this is the voice of the people. This is what the people want. This is what the people need. This is the needs of, befit the needs of now. And I, as the, President of the United States, am here to serve the people and to uphold the oath of office, to, make sure they preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. And our legislative bodies have decided that this adheres to the Constitution in a legitimate way that holds legitimacy. Okay, we're going to make it law. And then we all do our respective roles of making sure that this gets, enacted in our daily lives, that we live by it, that we actively participate and contribute to it, that we make sure that we do our part to uphold the systems that we have all mutually agreed upon. We can have that with the fourth branch of government. We don't have that now. We definitely don't have that now. How outraged are you, your Congress member, for signing on to something that is going to make someone in your family or somebody close to you or somebody in your community suffer needlessly and unnecessarily? Before this law was enacted, they weren't suffering. Now that it is, they're going to suffer. Their lives were much better before this bill. And people currently in office are the reason why that happened. And you need to be able to have power to change that. You needed to have power to say that that's not something I'm okay with. True government by the people, for the people. Direct democracy. We have the technology, we have the capacity, we have the means to do that now, and that's what we need to do. And we all need to work together in terms of defining what is the good life and how we can build that up. And so I really hope that we can take this opportunity that's given to us, yes, it's a bad thing. Big, beautiful bullshit is what it is, take it as an opportunity to say, we need to really look at ourselves and really determine how we can move forward so these sorts of bad things stop happening. Bad actors with nefarious intent need to no longer have the capacity to rule over everybody with laws not of our choosing, right? Remember the Declaration of Independence that says that, we removed ourselves from a government. We forcefully overthrew the government of our system, established a new one. And we declared in that independence that say that we understand that we have the right to do that. We have the right to alter or abolish a government that is not working for us. And while I don't think that we need to abolish our government, I think that America is, a pretty good system. Hold on for 249 years. We can make it longer. We can make it to the next centennial, and beyond. But we need to perfect that, and we need to alter that system to make it more effective for the needs, befit the needs of now. And our capacities are aligning for our capacity to a more direct democracy, and I think that it's in our best interest to approach that and achieve that. So I think it's the best way to make sure that everybody is able to live the good life in America. I think it's the best way in order to shrink down our deficit. It's the best way to weed out the corruption within our government systems. I think it's the best way to help to inspire good people to run for office. And I think it's a really great way to help to form a more perfect union, bond us together with a sense of community and togetherness and shared responsibility like we've never had before. I think that it could be a unifying factor that helps us to no longer, see, the political right and the political left, or, pitting one side against the other, but rather understanding that these are just differences in perspectives, perceptions, and propositions, and that we each have a unique type of proposition that we're bringing to the world, and we should be able to come to a conversation space, debate these issues on the merits, and determine what really is the best practices moving forward. And the people should be the ones determining that, and we can have that with the fourth branch of government. So With that, I'm grateful for your valuable time, attention, and consideration of everything that I have shared with you today. And I really hope that you will consider being a part of a movement that can help to establish a fourth branch of government, civics, help to establish a archetype of stewardship into the national identity of America, and to help to seek out and to inspire and to support and to elect individuals into office who really do have the best interests of America at heart, have the best interests of the world at heart, have the best interest of all people at heart, and really want to see us achieve something that's far greater than what is possible right now with the current POTUS 47 regime. So with that, may you continue to be blessed in your life, and may you continue to love, support, and care for one another. In these trying times, we really do have to lean on one another. We really do have to depend on community, because it's going to be the only thing that gets us through. But we are enough. We have the capabilities to get through even this very difficult challenge, and to come out on the other side much stronger for it. So don't lose hope, and don't lose sight of what's important, and remain true to the original spirit of intent of our founding principles in America. Go forth, and freedom go with you. I know it will be a challenge for all of us ahead. I am going to do my part, but I know I can't do this alone. I'm not enough on my own. I can't, but we can make a difference. And I hope you believe in that simple truth too. Until next time, be well.